I think what's really good early on in the book, again, wow, we're just teasing the framework here. Basically what Donald Miller says about the consumer is, and this is true if you think about it, everything we do, every decision we make, every product we use, everything we decide to do comes down to the fact of, will this help me survive or thrive as a human being? Welcome back to the Smart Nonsense Podcast. I'm Henry. That's Dylan. On Smart Nonsense, we talk about entrepreneurship, self-development, challenging norms. We're back, baby.
We're back. And
It's
guess
March.
What? We brought our live audience with us. He's so Gen Z'd out. He doesn't even.
Hey, we got a new catchphrase. It goes, yes, sir. Skirt. It's good to be back today.
Oh, there's a lot on our plate today. We're talking about a book. I don't know if you want to intro that, but we got I don't know where we start, Belky. We got lots of problems on our hands.
Today, we'll get to the problems. Today, we're doing a little book club on a nice little read. It's called Building a Storybrand by Donald Miller.
Show it to the camera.
It's a #1 best-selling Wall Street Journal bestseller. All right? So get on YouTube. Watch this, subscribe, send Dylan a message, send him an email, do
send me a DM
all
if you're
the
cute.
things. That was a lot of calls to action.
Yeah, you read the book, but
Who's
you
it
didn't
for?
do it. Who's the book for? Well, Belky, let me. Oh, this is kind of intimidating.
We've got a viewer.
We got a
Can't see him.
crackhead staring at us.
He's behind the camera. He's creative director.
Belky, I was thinking about how to start this podcast. And I don't know.
Is there
I might
stuff we
blow
gotta
it.
get out
I
of the
might
way?
blow it again. I don't want to start it this way. Never mind. Okay, so here we go. We go back to World War II, Belky, because that's where it all starts. And I use the voice. I use the voice when I get excited.
Every episode now has a World War II
Yes,
history
sir.
lesson.
We talked about the
Yes,
flying
sir.
fortress in the last one. That's it playing.
That's Dylan
Out of
playing
the
it
way,
with his
AJ.
finger.
This one, we're talking about World War II. That shit wraps up, right? We give them Nazis and the Japanese a good, and the Italians if you count them. We give them a good little butt whipping. I want to say butt whipping.
We're getting there. We're getting there.
It's been so long since we shot a podcast. Okay, so we get some good butt whipping, if that's a phrase. And then coming out of that, we get Germany, and we split that shit in two. Because on one side, we got the Soviets. On the other, we have the Americans.
Did we read the same book? Did we read the same book?
There's a lot of preamble here, let me tell you. I think I started too far back. But we both think we're dope as shit. They got a little bit of a different method, but we tag teamed the Germans. So bam, we get there. What do they do differently? They got this thing called communism. We don't like that. We do capitalism. But we all want to prove we're the big dogs in town. So how do we do that? We go to space. So we want to prove that we got all the tech. We can do this shit right. But guess what happens? 1957, Belky. I'm spitting everywhere.
1957? Sputnik?
Sputnik!
What book are we doing?
Yes, sir! Sputnik. They shoot that shit right up into orbit. We get nervous. 2 years later, not 2 years, let's call it 4 years, because that's 1961. They shoot Yuri Gagarin right up into space.
That's not your colleague, Yuri, right?
Different Yuri. This one's a little bit older because he's in the 60s.
All right.
They shoot him up. We're getting nervous. 1962, a
Me
year
too.
later. This is what's this podcast called?
I don't think I read the right book.
1962, Rice University. Where does that bring us?
I don't know.
John F. Kennedy gets on stage and he rallies the troops. What does he say, Belky? You know the speech.
Hold on. Something about hard things. Hold on. We don't do things because they're easy. We do them because they're hard.
Yes,
We're
sir!
going to the moon, baby.
Woo! We're going to the moon.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
That's what he did. He's like, we're going to spank these clowns right out of there. And that's the story brand, because we end up kicking ass, crushing ass, kicking ass, whatever I want to say, because it's got the story brand. He can rally the troops like no other because we have the villain, the Soviets, and their little communism. We don't like them. There's the problem. Who's going to be the big dog with the big D? It's got to be us. And then it's this whole philosophical question of, are we controlling the universe? Like, are we the most powerful ones out there?
Did you make that up, or was that in there?
I was somewhere trickled in there. And
that was nice. That was nice.
That was something. But, there are 7 elements in this story brand. We're going to get into
It's a great transition.
It knocks them all out.
Did you say who it's for?
No, I said JFK. That's who it's for. Oh, yeah, he's our guide.
No, Pop.
He's our guide.
JFK was not the hero of that story, my
But
friend.
he's the guide.
Yes,
the
he's
hero's
the guide.
America, baby.
America.
USA number 1.
That's who it's for. No, that's not who it's for. It's for the guides. Because traditionally, myself included, you start a company, you do something, you sell a product, whatever you're doing, you're like, I'm dope, I'm doing it, I'm going against the grain, and I'm getting it done.
Yes, sir. All those
I'm the
Ds.
hero. I'm a superhero for getting it done. No. No. You will fall flat on your face if that's the mode of thought you take all the way to the end of your company's life cycle. The consumer, the Americans are the hero, and you or JFK in that sense are guiding them to success. But you got to tease in. Okay, we'll get to the script.
So that's a big question we got to answer, because traditionally we have no idea. Clearly, we don't even know what we're doing in this whole podcasting world. But the hero is not the Smart Nonsense podcast. Not at all. Not Belky, not me. The hero is you, the listener, you, the viewer, if you're on
That's
YouTube,
exactly
like
right.
a stud. And so we want to wrap our brains around this whole story brand framework for how to tell your story, whether you're an entrepreneur or just some marketing guy at a company, or just like in general telling people what you do. I think it's cool to have that one-liner that really encapsulates how you impact the world.
And what Miller says about what we'll get to in a second, the story brand script, is every successful thing follows this. Every good book you've read, every series, every podcast you listen to that's successful, every Hollywood movie, like everything follows this to a T. He even says early in the book, like, I'm going to ruin everything for you because you're going to see, oh, there's some tension. They have a problem. There's the guide who's helping the hero with a plan, yada, yada, yada. So every successful thing follows this. This Smart Nonsense podcast as well also has to follow that. And we're the guides.
I know, that's what I'm nervous, because I was trying to go through here, and I'm like, I don't even know who the character that we're trying to help is. Like, are we talking about Gen Z entrepreneurs out there, or is it like...
Yeah, that's what's tough, is because we were actually the hero of this story when we started this thing. Because it was for fun, it was a creative outlet, it was a way for us to exercise, like, forming reasonable thoughts.
I'm really going
into
the demographics on our 9 YouTube viewers. It's tough. I think it's
Can you
Slick
get
Rick
anything?
and all your fake accounts.
Probably.
So we'll get into the framework. We'll kind of break it down for ourselves. I think that might be useful. Who knows? But the idea is so dope. I've even gone through their website because I wanted to figure out how they market. But there are so many ideas that just flop. I think the biggest concern for people is you don't understand marketing, but you have this great product and you know it works, and you know it helps people, but it's like, how do you tell them succinctly in this like caveman one-liner way that this shit is dope?
I think what's really good early on in the book, again, wow, we're just teasing the framework here. Basically what Donald Miller says about the consumer is, and this is true if you think about it, everything we do, every decision we make, every product we use, everything we decide to do comes down to the fact of, will this help me survive or thrive as a human being? If not, it's literally a function of taking too much brain energy to figure out what somebody's saying or pitching or doing, that the consumer just turns the other direction. Caveman talk is what reminded me of that.
Because we follow a lot of people on Twitter, David Perel being one of them. What did I want to say? Ben Graham.
We follow one
Paul
person
Graham.
on Twitter.
Yeah.
It's David
I swear this
Perel.
is Paul Graham, right? I don't know. Every time I think of Benjamin Graham, who was like the intelligent investor guy, but whatever. He talks about, he has his essays. They're basically all like, good writing looks like simple writing. All it is just shit that it looks like you and I could do, and it's just super easily digestible. And that's what a lot of people fail at. They try and come up with these cute little workaround phrases where I think they had an example, and it's like, I don't know, ingesting knowledge so you can exhale excellence. And it's like, what the fuck does that mean? Like, tell me what your shit does for me.
At like university level writing, it was just like jargon. I think the tagline to take away there for anyone, whatever you're doing, if you confuse, you'll lose. That's it. That's it. Remember that rhyme. If you confuse, you will lose.
And everyone's like, what the hell is this podcast doing? And we're like, we don't know. We're confusing each other. But let's get into the framework. We've teased it enough. SB7 Storybrand 7 key stages in the framework. We can just list them real quick, and then we'll dive into each one. So you need a character, right? Whenever you're doing this shit, who's the character? Who's going to be the hero in your journey? Then you get into their problem. And usually with the problem, you kind of break it down into multiple stages, I guess we'll get into. Then they find a guide to help them with the problem. That guide gives them a plan, calls them to action, makes them do something. Then there's some sort of like stakes where either you have this awesome success or there's this terrible failure, and you got to lay out exactly why it's so important. And then by the end of it, the character transforms, and there's some sort of new emergence of a butterfly from that little caterpillar.
Right. And along the way, again, like, you can do this. I don't know how we're going to display this, but for any movie, there is this, like, a character has a problem. There's an external one, then there's an internal one, which is how they feel. There's a philosophical problem, which is why that matters. They meet a guide who helps them cross the river, gives them a call to action, and that tale either ends in a happy ending.
I just turned on the noise canceling, and that shit is
got me in your ears now. It's that push and pull of tension between the happy ending and that cataclysmic failure that is what makes a story worth telling.
What did he call it? The story gap or the something gap? There's some gap. There's this big
story
concept.
Loops, creating loops and closing them.
Yeah, I mean the main idea is open loop, closed loop, and it's everywhere, dude. That's the foundation to an interesting life is understanding loops. And
what kind of loops?
Hula hoops. No, it's like hula loops. It's just you want people to be interested in any shit that you're doing. So you want to bring it up, kind of tease it, say why it's important. And again, we don't really do it the best, but like in theory, you bring it up, tease it, and then now they're like begging for the answer. What is the answer? Give it to me. Solve this problem. Close this loop in my mind. And they even said like, what is it? Not Mary Had a Little Lamb, but any song. Actually, that stupid Hoops show that we watched. Hoops.
Yeah.
Yesterday, it was like they played this little song, and Family Guy does songs sometimes, but this song had 0 rhymes in it. And I kept there was an open loop. It's like I'm waiting for the rhyme, and it just never came. And I'm like, what the fuck?
Right. So I guess, for instance, like that song would never become an earworm because you have to close. The human being is always trying to close loops. I forget the loop point that you might be talking about, but it's like it's the survive and thrive thing. It's like your brain wants to do the least amount of work to remember something or do something or whatever. And so if that's like closing a stupid earworm, always trying to figure out the last.
Well, that's why, yeah, you're
think
like
about how much work you would have to
addict.
do to try and remember all those lines that didn't rhyme. Like that song will never catch on. That's just one example.
Yeah, I still don't remember it. So,
Okay. A character. Here's the brand script.
Yes, sir.
Summing up what you said. You have a character who has a problem. They meet a guide who gives them a plan. That plan calls them to action. And through that, their story either ends in success. No, it should end in success and helps them avoid failure. And through that whole journey, they will go from this person they were before, aspiring to become this character, hero that they are after. That's everything. You want to know a good example?
Yeah.
It's going back a little bit, but if you confuse, you'll lose. I like this one.
Okay.
Steve Jobs, Apple, in the 80s when they're releasing their first Macintosh. I think it was Lisa. I don't know. Steve.
Oh, there's actually.
Don't look at me so lovingly.
Mm-hmm. Was it Amazon Prime or Netflix? I forget. They have a really good Jobs not documentary, but movie about. Yeah, it must have been Lisa, and then he had some cube shit that just didn't sell. Some like black.
Oh,
cube.
Next.
Oh, that was. Dude, this movie's great. I don't know. We're gonna put it right there in the middle of me.
Did we watch it?
I watched it with my mom.
We're gonna put it in the middle of us. Okay.
Yeah.
Mama's Boy. So, with the release of the first, I think it was Lisa Macintosh, doesn't matter. What Steve Jobs does, because he's like this highfalutin guy, he do you rent out a newspaper advertisement? Purchase it. He purchases a New York Times advertisement, and it's like 9 pages. All the specs, all the technicality, all the stuff he's like geeking out over. Computer hits the market, huge flop. Why? If you confuse, you'll lose. Nobody knew why they were supposed to buy this computer, what they're supposed to do with it.
You got to think, if you came up to a caveman and you're like, check out these specs, he's like,
first of all, what's a spec?
So,
but
people,
wait, what he does is,
your point.
okay, what he does is he comes back with the next launch again, Macintosh 2. I don't know what the fuck it was, but all they did to advertise wasn't 9 pages in the New York Times. They just rented billboards that said "Think Different," and by that point, they had created this entire story brand about their consumer, who's the creator.
And now you don't need to prove all the specs and everything because you're like, oh, they just constantly innovate. You know they're going to be cutting edge in whatever they do because they think differently.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, Belky, that's a good example there. Does that fit in the framework? Where the fuck were you in the framework? I got lost there.
I went a little bit back. I said if you confuse, you'll lose.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, that's we're confusing people with ourselves.
That's my hope. My hope is that when we confuse, the humor and the nonsense is enough to keep people around because it's so low stakes. So should we go into like?
I like the problem. All right. So we get everyone kind of. You got to figure out your hero. Like we're still trying to figure it out. Maybe it's a 23-year-old semi-entrepreneur that's scared, needs community. I don't know exactly what it is, but then they have a problem, and you need that villain. For America in the 60s, it was the Soviets. Here, the podcast, the villain is the banker working 9 to 5.
Probably.
Yeah. That doesn't want to be there. And then they face sort of 3 sub-problems within the problem. 1 external, 1 internal, and 1 philosophical. So if you go back to, say, the space race shit, just because I brought it up, external is like who has the best tech, like who's just like,
external is basically like first to the moon wins.
Like there's this Cuban Missile Crisis. We have what's the arms race? Like arms race.
Yeah.
Basically, everyone's concerned about orbit and all these ballistic missiles. We want to just not die. So that's the external problem there. Internal is like who's the big dog on campus, and campus being the world.
I think of it as maybe that's what it is. I thought it was like how does that make your hero feel? The internal problem.
Yeah, it's like confidence versus inferiority.
Right. Wait, there's a really good distinction here. Companies often sell external problems, but people buy solutions to internal problems.
Hey, look at you.
That's a big one. So if JFK comes and he's selling the fact, he's selling the external problem, which is what we need to get to the moon. People wouldn't buy into it. It's not until he targets that internal problem, which is why we as Americans should be proud to be Americans. We should go to the moon, that people bought into the mission.
Yeah, it's the pride. I mean, that's the one thing, our overconfidence. That's what we're known for, and it all stems from
you and me.
The shit. No, like
the
country
America
as a whole. Yeah, everyone.
I'm
hates
like,
us
I mean, I guess.
Same thing with Argentina and Latin America. Everyone hates them because they think they're the big dogs down there.
Philosophical.
And I think philosophical there is communism versus capitalism. Like, how are we going to govern the world?
Why does this matter? Yeah.
So, I just love the natural story within history there. Hey, history.
Yeah.
All right. Then the guide. Is that enough, or do we miss more?
That's good.
Hey, that's good.
That's good.
Meets a guide.
The guide can do 2 things. Really quick. Well, the guide has to show some form of empathy. Like, I understand. JFK. Here we go. This is going to be the JFK pod. JFK, shows some form of empathy. Like, I resonate with you. I'm an American. Blah, blah, blah. And they have to have some authority, which is trust, which is why should the hero blindly follow this guide to the other end of
Didn't he have that story
time.
Where he was the war hero, where he had the PT Cruiser or whatever that got shot, and he was in the water and saved some survivors?
I don't know. I read this a while ago.
No, it wasn't in the book.
Oh. Who? JFK?
Yeah.
I don't do history.
Yeah.
PT Cruiser?
I love history. We should just turn this into a history podcast, and I just try and convince you that
Be
it's
a
dope.
different story, Brand.
So, yeah, empathy. I mean, he's an American, so kind of natural empathy there. He cares for us succeeding. Authority. I kind of want to, like, connect the podcast with a lot of this, because clearly we didn't think about this beforehand. But, like, authority comes from guests or books. We don't actually have our own authority for the most part, other than, like, being able to feed ourselves.
Right. We haven't made it to success as a guide, in a sense, to have that authority. I think that's why My First Million is so successful, is because those guys are living and breathing it. They've made it. They've sold companies. We trust the hell out of them for their authority. That's a big difference. But it depends what framework we're working. Like, we have the authority of making it through the education we did. That's what we talk a lot about.
I don't give a fuck about telling people how to get into schools, though.
I mean, telling people to get out of the rat race. Like, we have the authority to say we're out of it and we're okay.
Yeah, that's valid.
But we're not that okay. So that needs to wait.
Okay.
But the plan I like. So then that guide gives them a plan. And what the plan is the lost hero is standing on one side of the river, and the guide is just planting huge stones for them to step across the river. That's the plan. Step on this stone, then that one, and that one, and you'll be on the other side of the river.
And we're staying kind of abstract here, but it's literally like you get on a sales page on a website, and it's like, all right, you're the hero. This is the problem you're facing. I know this. I've had this problem before. Here's exactly steps 1 through 4 that you need to do to buy. And then once you buy, you do these 4 steps to get all set up. And now that's going to resolve whatever problem you had. So the kind of, I guess we're going into the calls to action. They have like
this is good. Do you remember this one?
Oh, you like this one?
Direct versus transitional. I love this book. I've done this exercise so many times.
This is the first time Belky's convinced me to read a book.
That's good. I think so I got it from a friend, one of our developers at Dunbar, and then I think you looked it up. You're like, wow, it actually has 5 stars, like across the board, right?
It's got a lot of reviews too.
Hella reviews. Okay, that's a good litmus test. So the call to action, there are 2 types. There are direct calls to action, and there are transitional calls to action. And the difference is transitional calls to action are, will you date me? Whereas a direct call to action is, will you marry me? Right? Hold on. I want to look up this conversation.
David's in the audience. Should we bring it up? He might need the book.
Okay.
In the know.
Because it takes a lot. He says, like, people don't do enough calls to action. I just missed what you guys are talking about.
Yeah, it's fine.
He says people need way more calls to action than you think. And it goes something like this. The company asks, will you marry me? Customer, no. Company, will you go out with me again? Yes. Oh, I know what you're talking about. Okay, hold on. Let me finish this. The customer says, yeah, I'll go out with you again. I'll try that product. I'll download your PDF, whatever. Okay, company. Company says, fuck this. Will you marry me now? The person says no. We're like, okay, transitional. Will you go out with us again for another date? Customer says, sure. You're interesting and the information you provide is helpful. Last time, will you marry me? The customer finally, okay, I'll marry you now, which means I will order that product. I will buy that thing. I will go with you as myself, like whatever it is. You have to do a lot of dating, a lot of transitional calls to action. Keep asking, keep dating before you can find
Not always. Sometimes you just shove on it right out of the gate. You get the one or
all
a
right,
one.
Let's point some fingers.
The person we're going to talk about was giving a hard head shake. All I want to say is, I already said his name.
This is just Hinge stuff, by the way. Inside jokes.
Oh, you're going in more detail. Strong. All I'm saying.
We haven't named names.
I don't want public shit on here.
Okay, it's got to get cut. Okay, moving on.
Nothing's cut. It's all good.
Moving on.
There's nothing there.
The call to action ends in success. It ends in success so that your character avoids failure. And that's super spelled out too. It's like, what does a successful world look like in this story brand? And failure has to, I'm mansplaining, but failure has to not be so
great. In your head. I don't like this.
Failure has to be not so great that it's overwhelming and causes your hero to do nothing, but not so meek that there's not enough tension for the hero to want to thrive and success and have success. It has to be like a pretty healthy dose of failure.
Yeah, I think for us, it's just the fear of dying, living an unfulfilled life.
Yeah.
That
We probably have to get more specific than that.
I know we do.
Just like, what does unfulfilled mean?
It's like,
here's the thing. What we have to do, and I told you this in all the time we've been waiting to shoot pods, is like, there is a story brand to be written for the podcast as a whole. There's also a story brand to be written for each and every episode. And our format is, how do we take the listener, the viewer, maybe it's us if we really do this for ourselves, how do we take us through the story brand narrative each and every episode?
that's a high bar. Clearly didn't do it for this podcast, but maybe
Loop-de-loops.
That's one thing. Okay, I was thinking about this with good brands we like. We mentioned My First Million. I like their podcast because I come out of that and I know I'm going to get tangible results. My transformation is, I'm going to go from, we didn't even cover transformation, but
True.
I'm going to go from like,
The most important slide.
like just, I don't know, some bored semi-entrepreneur to now someone with an idea. Like, they're going to give me an idea. You'll come out of this with something to take action on. I love that. I think Call Her Daddy's like, oh, you're going to get better at sex, or you're going to have better sex, whatever it is. That's their sort of deliverable. JFK, we're going to put a man on the fucking moon. Like, it's just very clear, concise what you're going to get out of everything. I don't know what the hell people get out of this.
It's got to be entertaining. What else you
I
got?
think of this like a textbook that you can actually read.
This? Story
Yeah.
brand?
No.
Oh,
As in like the podcast in general. Like, textbooks are boring. It's like educational, semi.
Yeah.
That's also entertaining.
And I texted you the other day, like, this is kind of story brandy, but the stuff that resonates the most is the stories we tell. It's the
We
history
gotta
you
tell
tell.
more
It's the
stories.
travel stories we tell. It's the, putting anything in the framework of a story is what allows people to latch onto it, because your brain is looking for patterns and things that happen in stories and narratives to try and piece puzzle pieces together.
That's the beauty of all of marketing, is this shit doesn't change. We haven't changed in tens of thousands of years. Voice crack. I haven't changed since puberty. So, okay. Regroup, Dylan. Regroup. Okay. So the whole point is, human psychology does not change. We know this shit. People love stories. Just tell a good story. This book tells you exactly how to. And guess what? That story is going to help you sell whatever your product is, whatever your company is trying to put out to the world. And now you can survive and thrive a lot better.
The last thing you need.
Mm-hmm.
Everything you said is true.
Okay.
The last thing you need in your company, as a podcast host, as whatever, Slick Rick, I know you're listening, as a chiropractor, you know this, you've made it, you're wiser, much wiser. You need your one-liner. And the one-liner is a distilled story brand. It's a character with a problem, a plan, and what success looks like. And that one-liner never changes. He talks about, I think, a musician. Like the biggest pop stars we know, they show up and they sing the same song over and over and over again. They do it because they have to. That's their identity. Like, you have to have a one-liner.
Do we have a one-liner?
Speak up. No. When someone says, what do you do? It should be the same freaking thing every single time, so that people start talking about what you do, and then it precedes itself.
It's funny because I have a lot of people ask, like, oh, what's your podcast about? And now it's just taking your little elevator pitch. It's the super concise version of the elevator pitch. Even this morning, hearing David describe Dunbar, I was like, oh, like, this one-liner, once you get it, you just copy and paste it for everyone. It's like an essay in college, and you're like, oh, just send it out to everybody.
The author even says he would go around the workplace he'd ask someone, what's our one-liner, and give them $5 if they got it right. Right here, it would be like, if we're talking about Gen Z, it's like, we help Gen Z with this problem by talking about these things so that blank, which would be success. Our character, Gen Z, has a little problem. we have the plan, we think, and what does success look like? That's your one-liner.
Yeah, I wonder what that internal problem is. Is it like fear, or is it? I don't know who the hell we're appealing to.
I can give a better example.
Maybe
Dunbar's one-liner.
Maybe we come with some one-liner options next podcast, and we're like, this is what the podcast gonna be.
What we should do, I think it would be too much to do this live on the air, but we should really sit down and do this.
Yeah, that would have been nice for this episode.
Yeah, right.
Imagine.
Here's the one-liner for Dunbar if it ever loads.
Shouldn't
Loading.
You don't
loading,
get $5.
Loading. I do know it, but I also know I have little notes in here. Okay, we're helping you. That's our character. It should probably be more specific, but this is like a mission statement.
Yeah, who's you?
Exactly. Okay, forget it for now. Escape the grips of social media.
Okay.
That's a problem. That's the villain. That's all kind of baked in there. By making it, here's the plan. Here comes the plan, Pop. By making it super easy to find and meet up with your closest friends. And when you meet with them, you receive random rewards to use together. And then there's a statement on success.
Are you supposed to get into feelings more?
Well, that's success. Maybe? So our success is, with our help, you'll be able to optimize the time you spend with your Dunbar circles and have better connectedness to the friends you care most about. I feel like the problem you're
solving is this loneliness. People want to connect more with other people. So how does that manifest itself?
Well, it depends on the framework, right? It depends if we're targeting like this social dilemma, this people spending too much time on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, Snap. I'm replacing a lot of N's with M's. I think I said Snapchat.
I wasn't even listening to you.
Versus what you talk a lot about is the persona who, is looking, we call it internally, Meetup Martin. Meetup Martin's looking, that's a persona. You little Meetup Martin. Meetup Martin is lonely. Yeah. Where are my friends at? Looking for that. So maybe it needs more specificity. But we have 3 different personas we talk about.
That's the thing,
three different
compared
heroes.
to whatever you had before this, it's like night and day in terms of, all right, now I can sort of clearly picture the problem, how it's getting solved, and just in one line, you can convey your message. So I think that's the whole idea, is you go through this whole framework, and we're going to have photos everywhere on YouTube so you can see it. But you take that, distill it down into one sentence. That's your guiding light for customers, for your team, for everyone to just see this is what our company stands for, this is what our story brand is.
Yeah. And again, you can do this for everything. I'll say we have at Dunbar, we have a story brand for our customers. We have a story brand for our employees. We have a story brand for our merchants.
I thought it was supposed to be the same one. You have a different one for your team. A different one. For the...
Yeah. Because the hero of the Dunbar culture story is the employee. And the executives are the guides. You have to do separate ones. Our merchants have a different story brand script. They have a different problem we're solving. And Dunbar's the guide.
So at the end of the day, JFK put us on the moon because of StoryBrand. So if you want to go to space, then that's how you do it. Hey, Elon Musk, we could have talked about Elon. He just landed on Mars with
He did not land on Mars. NASA did, but that's okay.
Elon just in his little Tesla.
I think Elon tweeted about it.
You see the Tesla, how it's just orbiting Earth? Or is that Earth? What?
They sent a
Earth.
Tesla out of orbit. Ooh, you're out of your comfort zone now, Pop.
Yeah,
the Tesla Roadster. That's old news. That was like 2 years ago.
Don't follow the news. I just saw on Twitter the little like Discovery or whatever they call this robot thing. It's some of that Perseverance or something. Perseverance is like, we landed on this shit, and I was like, you're swearing, huh, little robot?
So you really think the robot's tweeting?
I think so.
We gotta get out of here.
All right. Well, that's StoryBrand. We will see you next episode. Maybe we'll have Ian on next.
Oh, Tobias!
That's going to be a good one.
That's the last bit of pod we have not talked
tokens.
about. We will see you next, I believe, Monday with an old friend. He's my friend now, baby. We've had him on here many times. Ian Lapham will be joining us soon.